The legend of the Holy Grail is one of the most enduring and captivating tales in medieval and later Christian folklore. Rooted in Arthurian legend and connected to the story of Jesus Christ and the Last Supper, the Holy Grail has been the subject of numerous stories, poems, and works of art throughout history. In this account, we will delve into the origins of the Holy Grail legend, explore its various iterations, and examine the associated beliefs surrounding this sacred object. The earliest known reference to the Holy Grail can be traced back to Chrétien de Troyes, a French poet and writer of the 12th century. In his unfinished work, Perceval, the Story of the Grail, Chrétien introduces the concept of the Grail as a mystical vessel used by Jesus during the Last Supper. However, he does not provide many details about the Grail itself or its significance. It was through later authors and their elaborations that the Holy Grail gained prominence and became the central focus of Arthurian literature. One of the most famous versions of the Holy Grail story is found in the 13th century work known as the Vulgate Cycle. This extensive compilation of prose narratives expands upon Chrétien's original tale and weaves a complex web of Arthurian legends. According to the Vulgate Cycle, the Holy Grail was the dish or chalice used by Jesus to serve wine during the Last Supper. It was said to possess miraculous powers, granting eternal youth, healing the wounded, and providing an abundance of food and drink. The Grail was also associated with spiritual enlightenment and was sought after by many knights who embarked on a quest to find it, known as the Quest for the Holy Grail. In these Arthurian legends, the role of the Grail Keeper is often attributed to Joseph of Arimathea, a figure from the New Testament who is said to have used the Grail to collect Jesus' blood at the crucifixion. Joseph brings the Grail to Britain, where it becomes a symbol of divine providence and is protected by a sacred order known as the Knights Templar. The most famous account of the quest for the Holy Grail is found in Sir Thomas Malory's 15th century work, Le Morte d'Arthur. Malory's version includes the adventures of King Arthur and his knights as they search for the Grail. The purest knight, Sir Galahad, ultimately succeeds in finding and beholding the Grail, but only those of impeccable character and strong faith can approach it without being consumed by its power. Throughout history, the Holy Grail has been interpreted and reimagined in various ways. Some interpretations portray it as a physical object, while others view it as a metaphor for spiritual enlightenment or divine grace. The Grail has been associated with other sacred artifacts, such as the Spear of Longinus, the spear used to pierce Jesus' side, and the Holy Bloodline, which refers to the descendants of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. The poem begins with Perceval of Wales, who has grown up isolated from society in the Welsh woods under his mother's care. While riding one day, he encounters a group of knights and feels a strong desire to become one himself. Despite his mother's objections, Perceval makes his way to King Arthur's court, where a young girl predicts a future of greatness for him. A surly knight named Sir Kay mocks him and strikes the girl, but Perceval astounds everyone by slaying a troublesome knight who had been bothering King Arthur and donning the knight's red armor. He then embarks on a series of adventures. Under the tutelage of the skilled knight Gornement, Perceval trains and eventually falls in love with Gornement's niece, Blanchefleur, whom he later rescues. Perceval captures her attackers and sends them to King Arthur's court to announce his vow of revenge against Sir Kay. Along the way, Perceval remembers his mother's distress when he left to become a knight and decides to visit her. During his journey, he encounters the Fisher King, who invites him to stay at his castle. Perceval witnesses a peculiar procession where young men and women carry magnificent objects from one room to another. The procession includes a young man carrying a bleeding lance, or the Spear of Destiny, two boys with candelabras, a beautiful girl with a decorated grail, and another maiden carrying a silver platter. Perceval, adhering to Gornement's teachings of silence, remains quiet throughout, The next morning, he wakes up alone and continues his journey home. He meets a mourning girl who scolds him for not inquiring about the Grail, which could have healed the wounded king. He also learns of his mother's passing. Perceval captures another knight and sends him with the same message to King Arthur's court. King Arthur sets out to find Perceval and tries to convince him to join the court. Unbeknownst to Perceval, he challenges Sir Kay to a duel, breaking Sir Kay's arm and exacting his revenge. Perceval agrees to join the court, but a hideous lady, also known as the Loathly Lady, appears and reproaches him for failing to ask the Fisher King about the Grail's purpose. Perceval's quest for the Holy Grail ultimately ends in failure. This can be seen in the trial of the Fisher King and the message conveyed by the hideous lady. The lesson revolves around the importance of asking the right questions and seeking knowledge. Perceval's silence and lack of inquiry during the mysterious procession, despite witnessing significant symbols and events, result in missed opportunities and unintended consequences. The Loathly Lady serves as a messenger, admonishing Perceval for his failure to inquire about the Grail's purpose from the Fisher King. The girl in mourning, who then transforms into a hideous lady due to Perceval's inaction, serves as a messenger, admonishing Perceval for his failure to inquire about the Grail's purpose from the Fisher King. Her appearance and subsequent reprimand highlight the significance of curiosity and the pursuit of understanding. Perceval's silence represents his naivety and lack of awareness as he follows the teachings of his guardian to remain silent. The underlying lesson emphasizes the importance of active engagement and questioning in order to acquire knowledge and fulfill one's responsibilities. By neglecting to ask about the Grail, Perceval misses the chance to heal the wounded king and potentially bring about positive change. The Loathly Lady's reproach serves as a reminder for Perceval and the readers to not overlook opportunities for growth, understanding and fulfilling their duties. Therefore, the lesson presented is that one should not remain passive or silent when faced with mysterious or important circumstances. Instead, it is essential to ask questions, seek knowledge, and actively engage with the world in order to fulfill one's potential and to make meaningful contributions. Upon reaching the age of 15, according to the medieval definition of adulthood, Galahad finally meets his father Lancelot, whom he had never encountered before. In a duel, Galahad defeats Lancelot, marking the first and only time Lancelot has ever been bested in a fair fight. Impressed by his skills, Lancelot knights Galahad. Subsequently, Galahad is brought to King Arthur's court in Camelot during Pentecost. Galahad is guided to the Round Table, where he is shown the vacant seat known as the Siege Perilous. The chair remains unoccupied until the one who succeeds in the quest for the Holy Grail emerges. Previous aspirants who dared to sit in it met immediate death. Galahad survives this trial, witnessed by Arthur, who recognizes his greatness and leads him to a river where a magical sword lies, Excalibur, embedded in a stone. The sword bears an inscription stating that only the rightful possessor, the world's finest knight, can remove it. Galahad easily accomplishes this feat, and Arthur proclaims him the greatest knight ever. Galahad is swiftly invited to join the esteemed knights of the Round Table, and soon after, a mystical vision of the Grail appears before Arthur's court. Thus, the quest to find the sacred artifact commences. All the knights of the Round Table set forth on the journey to locate the Grail, with Galahad taking the lead and the others following suit. Arthur laments the departure of his knights, foreseeing that many may never return, perishing in their pursuit. He fears this marks the beginning of the end of the Round Table. This could be interpreted as a theological statement, emphasizing that the pursuit of holiness must take precedence over earthly endeavors. Galahad in some ways mirrors Arthur by extracting a sword from a stone, echoing Arthur's earlier feat. Galahad is thus declared the chosen one, Notably among the knights, Galahad possesses the ability to perform miracles such as banishing demons and healing the sick. He primarily embarks on the Grail quest alone, vanquishing foes, sparing them at times, rescuing fellow knights like Perceval, and aiding distressed maidens. Eventually, Galahad reunites with Bors and Perceval. Together, the three Blessed Virgin Knights encounter Perceval's sister, who guides them to the mystical ship of Solomon. Using the ship, they traverse the sea and arrive on an island where Galahad discovers King David's sword. After numerous adventures, Galahad and his companions reach the mystical castle of Corbinic, the realm of King Pelles and his son Eleazar. However, Galahad does not reunite with his deceased mother. In a room arranged by his grandfather and uncle, Galahad is finally granted the sight of the Holy Grail. Galahad is then entrusted with the task of transporting the vessel to the holy island of Saris. After witnessing the Grail, Galahad requests the ability to choose the time of his death. Thus, while making his way back to Arthur's court, Galahad experiences a glorious rapture as the spirit of Joseph Arimathea visits him. In response to this divine encounter, Galahad requests to die. He bids farewell to Perceval and Bors, and angels appear to escort him to heaven. Bors and Perceval bear witness to his ascension. Depending on the version, Galahad either completely vanishes in a radiant light, being physically taken to paradise, or his mortal body remains behind and is later interred. In the latter case, Galahad is typically laid to rest alongside Perceval's sister, and eventually Perceval himself joins them in the grave. The success of Galahad's quest for the Holy Grail had been foretold even before his birth. Both Pelles and Merlin predicted this outcome. Merlin once informed Uther Pendragon, Arthur's father, that there would be someone who would occupy the seat at the table of Joseph, though that person had not yet been born. Initially, it was believed that this knight would be Perceval, but it is later revealed to be Galahad. Galahad's conception, like Arthur's and Merlin's, involved deception. Nevertheless, Galahad is the chosen knight to uncover the Holy Grail. In both the Lancelot Grail cycle and Mallory's retelling, Galahad stands above all other knights, deemed worthy of having the Grail revealed to him and being taken to heaven. That's about all I have for you today. I made a really cool video about the lore of the Loathing Lady, who appears in multiple recounts in Celtic and Norse mythology that you can view here. Thank you for taking this journey with me through the mysterious tales of the Holy Grail.